So when you take care of the physical and the spiritual needs, and make sure that you are in great shape spiritually and physically. How do you stay in great shape spiritually? You have to stay around the fire. You have to stay around the people of God, the saints of God. You have to stay in your word. You got to have a prayer life. And you have to turn that plate down. Now we have grace, which is God's unmerited favor. And grace, that unmerited favor, is that favor that we don't deserve. That favor that we have not done anything to, deserve his favor, to deserve his mercy. That's God's grace. And if you have grace, your grace will improve your health because you have grace. And your health will employ your grace. Employ meaning that it will engage your grace. And grace must be exercised in submission. We don't want to get high and lifted up. We don't want to get all hardy, but we want to remain humble, because my Bible told me that when you are humble, one day you will be honored and you will stand among kings and queens. So humble is the way. Well, I want to tell you a story about Little Red Riding Hood. And Little Red Riding Hood was that little girl that wore a red hood. And she wanted to go and see her mother, her grandmother. And her mother packed her a lunch, and she told her, she gave her some instructions. So whenever we are on assignment or whenever we have a journey, we are given instructions by God. Anytime you have something in the natural, there is always a spiritual side. So Little Red Riding Hood was on her way to see her grandmother to have lunch with her. And her mother told her, don't talk to any strangers. Do not stray off of the path. Go straight there. Your grandmother is expecting you. So Little Red Riding Hood went in the forest. The forest was beautiful, and there were flowers, and she stopped to pick the flowers. Her first step into disobedience. Now that may seem something small to you, but disobedience can get us in a whole lot of trouble. So she was disobedient, and she was bending down, engaged and dawdling along picking these flowers. Well, how many of you know that when you are on a journey, that the devil is always lurking. The devil is always looking to see what you're doing. It could be good, it could be bad, but there's always a deceitful, sneaky devil over in the corner standing quietly looking to see what you are doing. We understand that we're talking about the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, but in the spiritual sense, it was the devil. And so the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Well, Little Red Riding Hood wasn't paying attention. The enemy was watching her. He slipped up and he was standing beside her before she knew it. And she was so engaged in what she was doing, she didn't even feel the dark presence that was there. This is why the Bible tells us to watch as well as pray. You know, sometimes we're praying and we have our eyes closed, but we need to open our eyes, because you can't watch with your eyes closed. So she was there and she was picking these flowers, and the wolf changed his voice to sound nice and inviting. And he asked her, "What are you doing, little girl?" And she said, "Well, I'm picking flowers, and I'm going to visit my grandmother, and we're going to have lunch." And she just started talking too much. Now, how many of you know that we can talk too much and we can give the enemy a gun to shoot us? Because here we are just running our mouth. He didn't ask her all of that to tell where you're going, what you're getting ready to do, and all that. So she gave him too much information. Sometimes we don't even know who we're talking to. So we have to understand, don't be talking to everybody and giving out all your business. We have to let our words be yea and nay and seasoned with grace. If they ask a question, just give them a direct answer. Don't be giving a whole lot of details and all this, because she gave too many details and she gave the wolf an edge up on her. So she was there, she was picking flowers, and the wolf took the shortcut and went to the house where the grandmother was, and knocked on the door and changed his voice and, working in the spirit of deceit, and went in, and she opened up the door because she was expecting her granddaughter. And if Little Red Riding Hood had been talking so much and telling where she was going, the wolf would not have been able to go to the house and devour the grandmother. See, sometimes we talk so much that sometimes our family members get devoured because we're talking too much. So we have to let our words be yea and nay and seasoned with grace. So he went in and he ate up the grandmother, and Little Red Riding Hood realized that the hour was getting late. So she said, well, I better run on to Grandma's house. She knocked on the door. That old deceitful devil was in there, and he had got into a gown and a bonnet and got up under the covers and waiting on Little Red Riding Hood to come so he could devour her the way he did the grandmother. Well, she walked in and she felt like something wasn't right. And when we feel, because God has made us a certain way, and he's put, for those that are not saved, he gave you intuition. For those that are saved, he gave you the gift of discernment. And when you feel things, don't dismiss what you feel. So she walked in and something just didn't feel right, and the eyes didn't look right, and the mouth was too big, and the hands were too big. But the way the wolf was talking, it sounded like grandmother, but it didn't look like grandmother. So when she got just a little bit closer, she got close enough for the wolf to devour her. But thanks be to Little Red Riding Hood having common sense enough to yell out where somebody was close that could come and save her. So when we get too close to the devil, we have to be in a place where